An ordinary afternoon in Dallas, Texas, just after 5 o'clock. The porch camera is rolling the way it does every day. The homeowner's husband is standing by the front door. Her brother-in-law steps out past him. Nothing about it is out of the ordinary until you look at the ground.
As soon as I step out, watch, look. Right there, boom.
They came out of nowhere.
They disappeared.
A pair of glasses is now lying on the porch, right there between the two men, and a moment earlier they simply weren't there.
As soon as I step out, watch, look. Right there, boom.
They came out of nowhere.
They disappeared.
No one drops them, no one places them down. In one frame the ground is bare, and in the next the glasses have appeared as if from nowhere. People doubted her, of course, so she filmed a follow-up holding the glasses up in her room.
A lot of people have been asking me for a picture of the glasses or proof of the glasses. These are the glasses. They are clear.
They're real, clear-framed, ordinary-looking glasses.
It's not our style. Our style is more black, says you guys.
In her own words, they just came out of nowhere.
I don't leave them in my house. I put them back either on the porch or in my yard, but they don't stay in my house.
So what's to be made of this bizarre footage? Let me know in the comments.
Right there, boom.
They came out of nowhere.
They disappeared.
This next clip comes from a YouTuber called Deaf Paddler who was doing some paintwork inside an old house in the Zilker Park area of Austin, Texas. He's deaf and he's signing to the camera as he films when suddenly something strange happens. A chair behind him moves on its own. The house was built back in the 1950s, and according to him, it came with company. He says the late grandfather and grandmother of the homeowner never really left. It wasn't the first strange thing to happen to him there. He says that one night, sleeping upstairs, his bed began to shake at around 4 in the morning. Terrified, he ran from the room. And he wasn't the only one. A friend who took a nap on the reclining couch said he felt something shaking his chest like a pair of unseen hands, and it frightened him badly. As for the house itself, Deaf Paddler doesn't live there anymore. In his words, they kicked him out. The property was eventually sold for a small fortune, the old place torn down, and a brand new home built in its place. Though as he put it himself, he hopes the ghost is still there.
Hey guys, this is James Franco. Me, really James Franco. I'm here at my house. I'm not promoting anything, okay? I'm making this account because alright, some serious is going on, okay?
That's the actor James Franco speaking directly to camera on a brand new TikTok account that appeared out of nowhere in early June 2026. And the videos he's been posting have sent the internet into a frenzy.
Okay, I can't say too much right now. I just need you to follow me, then I'll know who's down, and I'm gonna show you some crazy stuff, okay? Just follow me, I'm gonna show you.
In them, Franco is insistent. He's real. It's him, not AI, not a deepfake, not anything else. He hints that he's being watched, that something strange is happening to him, and that he might disappear. If they take me, he suggests, you'll know what happened.
This is real, okay? I'm real. It's me, not AI, not anything.
And then there's the account name itself, James Franco 2319.
James, do this. No, could not write this. This is me, okay?
That number is the whole mystery, because to a certain kind of viewer, 2319 rings an immediate bell. In the Pixar film Monsters, Inc., 2319 is the emergency code, the one the monsters shout the moment a human object crosses over into their world. In the film, it's triggered by a child's white sock. In one video, Franco writes the account name on a piece of paper, points to those 4 digits, and says simply, "For those who know."
This is me, okay? Okay? For those who know, hooray.
So what is going on here? Why would an A-list actor suddenly resurface talking in riddles and pointing at a code from a children's cartoon?
Maybe seem crazy, like what's going on, what's the gimmick? No, this is real.
The most grounded explanation is also the most boring. It looks an awful lot like a viral marketing campaign. Franco has a film on the way, and eagle-eyed viewers notice the backgrounds in some of his videos appear to match the movie's set. The account follows almost no one except the film's official page and its director. A clever bit of mystery marketing, case closed. Except the film's own director went on the record to distance himself from it, saying the posts don't appear connected to the movie at all, and that he has no idea what Franco is actually doing.
If anything happens to me right now, you know what
And
happened.
that's where the rabbit hole opens up.
It got to me.
Conspiracy theorists have run wild. Some claim Franco is sending a genuine distress signal that they have got to him, and the 2319 code is his way of telling us a real person has been taken into somewhere he can't escape. Others have latched onto his appearance, saying he looks older, worn down, like a man who's been through something. A few have tied it to far stranger ideas about Hollywood, hidden worlds, and people who vanish from public life only to return acting like someone else entirely. For what it's worth, the footage itself is real. Fact checkers confirmed it genuinely is Franco, not an AI fake. What no one can agree on is why.
This is real, okay? I'm real. It's me, not AI, not anything.
So which is it? An elaborate piece of viral marketing dressed up in a cartoon code to get us all talking, or something stranger hiding in plain sight on a verified looking account? For now, the videos are still going up, and James Franco still hasn't told anyone what 2319 really means. There were no children at this wedding, not one. Keep that in mind. This set of photos was posted to the Ghosts subreddit by user Cannonball Maven on behalf of a co-worker. The pictures came from a friend who'd been taking photos outside at a wedding as the sun went down. At first glance, it's just a pretty sunset, a garden, a fence, the warm glow of buildings in the distance. But look to the left, down by the fence. There's a little girl standing there watching. Zoom in, and the detail only deepens the unease. She's small, in a light top and what looks like a checked skirt, and to a lot of the people who saw it, she doesn't look like a child of today at all. Something about her clothes reads as older, the 80s, the 90s, as though she stepped into the frame from another decade entirely. Perhaps it's a trick of the camera, a glitch in the way the phone knitted those frames together. But that still leaves one question hanging over the whole thing. If she's a real little girl standing at the fence in the fading light, watching the celebration from the shadows, then who is she? Because there were no children at this wedding. Something is crawling out of the drain in this hotel bathroom.
What the actual dude?
This scary video was posted to Reddit by user Courtney Rell, whose husband had been unclogging the shower drain when this started oozing out.
Still coming out.
He thought it was hair until he sprayed it with water and it fell apart, leaving an oily residue and a smell he could only describe as ungodly. The good news is, it's not alive. Reddit solved this one quickly. It's drain bio slime. A charming buildup of soap scum, bacteria, hair, and dead skin, all bonded together and dislodged by the drain cleaner, which when you think about it is almost worse, because that black rope sliding out of the wall is essentially every single person who has ever showered in that room.
What the actual dude?
Sleep well at your next hotel.
Dude. Still coming out.
A tour guide, alone in the Edinburgh vaults long before the first visitors arrive. She's done this 100 times. She knows she's the only one down here, or she should be. This scary video was shared on TikTok by Folklorist's Guide, who opens the Southbridge vaults each day before the tours begin. On this particular morning, she says she felt something she couldn't shake. The sense that she wasn't alone, that someone was following her through the dark. Footsteps echoing through a passage where no one else is supposed to be. To understand why that's so unsettling, you need to know where she's standing. The Edinburgh vaults are a warren of stone chambers buried beneath the arches of the South Bridge, completed in 1788. They began as storage and workshops, but as damp and flooding crept in, the businesses left, and the poorest of the city moved into the darkness below. In time, the vaults became a haven for the very worst of old Edinburgh. Taverns and brothels, thieves and murderers, even body snatchers, all operating in the pitch black beneath the streets. Eventually, they were sealed and forgotten, left in silence for over a century until they were rediscovered in the 1980s. And by then, many believe something had been left behind. Because the vaults have a most famous resident. The guides know him well. They call him Mr. Boots, the Watcher. He is, by all accounts, an intimidating presence. A large man, possibly a former watchman, who once guarded the goods stored down there, and who has never stopped patrolling. Visitors and staff describe the same things over and over. The smell of foul breath at their shoulder, a sudden tap or a shove from no one, the feeling of being watched in the dark. But more than anything else, Mr. Boots is known for one thing above all: the heavy, deliberate sound of his boots. Footsteps echoing through the vaults, often stopping with a slow scuff, as though he's come to a halt right beside you. Which brings us back to that morning. A guide, certain she was alone, who felt someone following her through the vaults. Footsteps walking the stone behind her in the one place where the dead are said to still keep watch. At first, this looks like nothing more than a photo of a miner at work. But look to the left of him. There's a second figure standing there, pale, translucent. You can see straight through him, and he appears to be dressed in old, worn mining clothes. The original source of this image has been lost, but it surfaced alongside a piece of folklore from the silver mines of Mexico. A legend the miners there have passed down for generations. They call him El Yergas. The story goes that El Yergas was once a miner himself, a man who died underground, working the same tunnels as everyone else. His name comes from his clothing. Yerga, a coarse, ragged, worn-out cloth, the threadbare clothes of a man who never made it home. And ever since, the miners followed one rule above all others: you never leave the mine alone. Because it was always the last man out, the straggler, who would meet him. A figure would appear in the dark, dressed like a miner or sometimes like a foreman giving orders, and lead the worker deeper into the tunnels. The miner would follow, never suspecting that the man walking ahead of him wasn't a man at all. When the others realized someone was missing and went back to search, they always found him, but never where he should have been. Sometimes slumped at the mouth of a shaft, sometimes high up a wall with no ladder in sight, sometimes down a passage no one had ever walked before, and when the lost miner came to, he'd tell the same story every time, that in the pitch black he'd been lifted and carried and set down by something he never saw. Now, there are perfectly reasonable explanations for the figure in this photo. A long exposure in low light, motion blur from a second worker stepping out of frame, the way old cameras smear and double an image in the dark. Any of those could explain a translucent shape beside a working miner. But here's the part of the legend that stays with you. The miners insist El Yergas was never evil. The strange places he led them to, those impossible spots where they were found, were often the sites of rich, untouched veins of silver and gold. Some men even woke with nuggets in their pockets, placed there in the dark. So if that really is El Yergas standing in his ragged clothes beside a living miner all these years later, then perhaps he isn't there to harm anyone at all. Perhaps he's just doing what he's always done, waiting for the last man out. This next scary video was filmed inside a church during Mass as the camera slowly pans across the congregation. According to the person who posted it, a ghost was captured in the middle of the service. There, among the seated congregation, sits a pale figure draped in a veil. And here's a still from the video, brightened up so you can see it a little more clearly. And according to the footage, no one in the church that day remembers seeing anyone who looked even remotely like that. But there it is, whatever it is, sitting quietly through Mass in the corner at the back of the church. This photo was shared on Reddit by user Keegan2279, who says his older brother showed it to him one night while they were swapping ghost stories. Neither of them has ever been able to explain it. It was taken long before the internet, and the only reason a copy survives is that years later the family photographed the original and emailed it around. It's a family reunion. The shot shows his brother's grandfather, together with his 11 brothers and sisters, gathered at the old house they all grew up in. A house that even then stood mostly empty. No one lived there. And on the day, no one was inside it. Every single person who was there is sitting in this photo. Or so they thought. Because off to the left, in the doorway of that empty house, there's something there. A face, small, pale, half in shadow. It looks for all the world like a little girl standing just inside the doorway, and in her hand she appears to be holding a doll. Now here's what makes it so unsettling. There were no children at this reunion. In fact, there was no one there under the age of 60. Not a single child anywhere on that property who could have been standing inside an empty house looking out. There are gentler explanations, of course. A shadow falling across an open doorway, a trick of the grain on a photo that's been copied and recopied over the decades, the way the human eye assembles a face out of shadow and light. But the family who lived it don't buy any of that. They knew everyone there. They knew the house was empty. And none of them can tell you who the little girl in the doorway is, standing in an empty house, holding her doll, watching the reunion from the shadows. First up, the internet briefly convinced itself that the President of the United States had hosted a meeting with aliens. In mid-June 2026, a set of images began circulating that appeared to show Donald Trump standing alongside 3 towering, platinum-haired figures in red military jackets. The story caught fire after journalist Jon Stewart shared one of the pictures, claiming it had been posted online and then quickly deleted. Within hours, the conspiracy crowd had gone all in, declaring them Nordic aliens or even reptilians in disguise. The reality was a little less cosmic. The images were AI generated and detection tools flagged them almost immediately. A reminder that in 2026, you genuinely cannot believe everything you see, no matter who's in the photo. Speaking of things that are hard to identify, the Pentagon has just released its 3rd batch of declassified UAP files, and one case has people talking. Back on a clear February morning in 2022, 5 US Army personnel walked out of an office building at Fort Carson, Colorado, and looked up to see something hovering over Cheyenne Mountain. They described it as potato-shaped, a creamy, opalescent white, and covered in what looked like articulating fish scales that rippled in slow waves. It hung dead still for about 2 minutes, then vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving no shadow behind. The official explanation, with quote, low confidence, investigators suggested it was sunlight bouncing off the snow. The witnesses aren't buying it. And if a fish-scaled space potato is exactly your kind of thing, you'll be pleased to know we've got a brand new range of paranormal stickers over at slaptham.com. Cryptids, ghosts, little green men, the lot. Stick them on your laptop, your water bottle, wherever you like. Head to slaptham.com and take a look. Now here's a cautionary tale for the ghost hunters among you. In Vietnam, a woman from Hanoi has been fined the equivalent of around $285 after authorities discovered her viral ghost stories were completely made up. Over a trip to the Trang An scenic area in Ninh Binh province, she'd posted 37 separate stories on social media describing terrifying paranormal encounters, racking up more than 52,000 likes. The only problem was that none of it had happened. She admitted she'd invented the whole thing to make her posts more engaging. Police were not amused and handed her a fine for spreading false information that caused public confusion. And finally, staff at a church thrift store in Brooksville, Florida got a nasty surprise while sorting through their donations. On the 16th of May 2026, someone dropped off a box of items that included what everyone assumed was a novelty skull, the kind of plastic prop you'd put out at Halloween. Except it wasn't plastic. On closer inspection, it turned out to be a genuine human skull. The Hernando County Sheriff's Office believes it may date back to the World War II era, possibly an old war trophy that was quietly tucked away for decades before ending up in a donation bin. They've said there's nothing criminal about it, but they would very much like to know who dropped it off and where on earth they got it. That's your rapid fire round. Now back to the countdown. This one comes from an unlikely place. Not a haunted house, not a dark forest, but a health and wellness podcast. Back in February 2025, the nutrition expert Dr. Ben Bigman sat down for a long interview on Diary of a CEO. Everything is perfectly ordinary until about 40 minutes in, when he's deep in a discussion about omega-3 fats. Listen closely.
Among other things, at least it would be the essential omega-3 fats. So there are 3 omega-3s, and we can only get 1 from plants.
There it is. You humans. A tiny slip quickly corrected to we, but the words are already out.
And you humans we can only get 1 from plants. And you humans we can only...
And of course, the internet did what the internet does best. It ran with it. Comment sections filled up with people only half joking that Dr. Bigman had let the mask slip, that he was a visitor from somewhere else, momentarily forgetting which species he was supposed to be talking to. Some pointed to the pause right after, as if he'd caught his own mistake. Others started rewatching the rest of the interview, hunting for more so-called tells.
So there are 3 omega-3s, and we can only get 1 from plants.
Now the obvious explanation is the boring one. People misspeak all the time, especially 3 hours into a long conversation. It's almost certainly nothing more than a slip of the tongue. Almost certainly. But just in case, Doctor, welcome to Earth. We hope you're enjoying your stay.
So there are 3 omega-3s, and we can only get 1 from plants.
2 photographs taken 8 months apart on the same bedroom security camera. Here's the first one. A pale, smoke-like shape rising over the bed in the dark. And then 8 months later, the very same camera in the very same room captures this. Now, some who've looked into this point to a possible explanation. The homeowner, they say, suffers from sleep paralysis, that terrifying state, half awake and half dreaming, where people often sense a figure looming over them in the dark. And it's a fair point. Sleep paralysis could absolutely explain the feeling of a presence in the room. But here's the thing, sleep paralysis happens inside the mind of the sleeper. It doesn't explain what the camera saw. And the camera, sitting quietly in the corner, captured something twice. What's perhaps strangest of all is the owner's reaction to it, because they aren't frightened, not in the slightest. They say they feel completely safe in their home, that they don't believe this is a bad entity. And as proof, they offer one final detail. Their dog, they point out, isn't scared of it either. So while most of us would have packed our bags after the first photo, this homeowner simply carries on, sleeping soundly night after night with whatever it is that keeps appearing above the bed.
And I saw me walk into my room, but I'm white, so I see the white me.
That's the actor Jamie Foxx describing something he says happened to him in a hospital bed. He became convinced, in his own words, that someone was trying to clone him.
Yes. When they said I was a clone, that made me flip in the hospital. That's it. These motherfuckers is trying to clone me.
To understand how he got there, we need to go back to 2023. That year, Foxx suffered a sudden and very serious health scare. For a long time, no one knew what had happened to him, and rumors ran wild. He later revealed the truth. He'd suffered a brain bleed, which led to a stroke. It was genuinely life-threatening, and for a while his recovery was uncertain. But it's what Foxx says happened inside that hospital that has the internet talking.
And I couldn't get my mind around it. I had a stroke. I'm in perfect shape.
According to Foxx, he couldn't accept that he'd had a stroke. He felt fine, so he secretly grabbed his phone to see what the outside world was saying about him. And what he found were conspiracy theories. People online claiming he'd been cloned.
I snuck my phone because I didn't know what the outside world was saying. And so I snuck my phone to see what people were saying. I've just been in this hospital and I couldn't get my mind around it. I had a stroke.
And that, he says, was the thing that tipped him over the edge. He became convinced the doctors weren't treating him at all. They were trying to clone him. He even decided he knew why. So they could make a white version of him, because in his words, a white Jamie Foxx would, quote, sell better overseas.
You're trying to clone me, motherfucker, or the white clone. And I know why you're trying to clone me. You make me white, because I'll sell better overseas.
Then he says he saw it. A white version of himself walking right into his hospital room. He tried to get everyone's attention. No one reacted.
And then I saw me walk into my room. But I'm white, so I see the white me.
But he had a Caesar too? Just
Not
like you?
all that, the white me.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'm like, and I'm trying to get their attention, and no one said anything.
The next morning, he got out of bed, ready to confront them all. The hospital had to bring in a psychiatrist, and when that psychiatrist gently asked if he was all right,
Says, are you all right? And I says, am I all right, or am I all white? I saw what happened yesterday. So he just calmly goes, I think we're gonna lower your dosage.
Now Foxx tells this whole story as a wild, near-death fever dream, something his mind conjured up while he was at his most vulnerable. But the internet is not so sure it was a hallucination, because when this scary video resurfaced, the comment sections absolutely exploded. And the focus wasn't really on Foxx, it was on everyone else at the table. Watch the other celebrities sitting around him as he tells this story. They aren't laughing. They look to a lot of viewers deeply uncomfortable, awkward, as though Foxx is saying something he isn't supposed to.
When they said I was a clone, that made me flip in the hospital.
And so the theories took off. Thousands of commenters became convinced that the cloning story wasn't a delusion at all, but a slip. That Foxx was telling the truth, and the awkward faces around the table belonged to people who knew it. Some went further still, suggesting those very celebrities might be clones themselves, or somehow in on it. Others pulled in other famous names, pointing to long-running theories that stars like Jim Carrey have been, quote, replaced. The strangest part, they say, is the way Foxx tells it, not like a funny story, like something that, to him, felt completely and utterly real. So what really happened in that hospital room? A frightening hallucination brought on by a brain bleed, trauma, and a cocktail of medication? Or did Jamie Foxx, for one brief moment, say something out loud that he was never meant to? We'll let you decide.
I saw the white clone, and I know why you're trying to clone me.
Want to see more mysterious videos? Then hit that subscribe button and turn on all channel notifications. That way you'll always know when we drop our scary video compilations. On the morning of the 16th of August, 1951, the people of a quiet little town in the south of France began to lose their minds. All of them, all at once. And to this day, no one can say for certain why. The town was Pont Saint-Esprit, a sleepy riverside community in the Gard region of southern France. The kind of place where nothing happens. Until one summer, something did. It started gently, a scattering of townsfolk turning up at the local doctor's surgeries, complaining of nausea, vomiting, chills, and a strange creeping cold in their limbs. At first, it looked like nothing more than a bad case of food poisoning. The doctors sent them home to rest, but over the next few days it became something else entirely, something out of a nightmare. The sickness gave way to terror. Townspeople began to hallucinate, all of them gripped by the same kinds of monstrous visions. They saw fire crawling up the walls. They saw snakes. They saw beasts and monsters slithering at the edges of their vision. And the hallucinations were not gentle dreams. They were vivid, physical, and absolutely real to the people living through them. One man became convinced that snakes were inside him, devouring his stomach from within. Desperate to stop them, he ran for the river and tried to drown himself. A local postman out on his rounds suddenly felt his entire body beginning to shrink. He fell from his bicycle in the street, certain that serpents were coiling tight around his arms. Another man looked down and watched in horror as his own heart slid out through the soles of his feet. He begged a nearby doctor to push it back inside him. Patients thrashed in their beds, screaming that bright red flowers were blossoming out of their bodies. An 11-year-old boy tried to strangle his own mother. A grandmother hurled herself against a wall again and again, breaking 3 of her ribs. And in the most famous case of all, a man became utterly convinced that he was an aeroplane. He threw himself from a second-floor window, shattering both his legs on the ground below. And then, impossibly, he stood back up and ran. The town descended into chaos. People tore off their clothes and ran naked through the streets. The hospitals overflowed. Victims had to be wrestled into straitjackets, and some were chained to their beds to stop them harming themselves or others. One of the town's doctors, watching it unfold around him, gave that terrible stretch a name that stuck. He called it the Night of the Apocalypse. When it was finally over, the toll was devastating. More than 250 people had been affected, around 50 were committed to asylums, and depending on which account you believe, somewhere between 5 and 7 people were dead. So what could possibly do this to an entire town? The investigation moved quickly, and it pointed to one place, a single bakery run by a man named Roch Briand. Almost everyone who fell ill had eaten his bread. Even animals that were fed scraps of it sickened and died. The bread, it seemed, was cursed. Le pain maudit. The leading explanation then and now is a fungus, ergot, a mold that grows on rye and which can contaminate flour. And here's the chilling part. Ergot contains compounds that are chemically, almost structurally, the parent of a very famous drug, LSD. In other words, the entire town may have been accidentally dosed with a powerful psychedelic baked right into their daily bread. It's a clean explanation, but not everyone is satisfied by it, and over the years other theories have emerged. Some researchers blamed mercury from a fungicide used to treat grain. Others pointed to a chemical used to illegally bleach flour white. Each has its supporters. None has ever fully closed the case, and then there is the theory that refuses to die. Decades later, an American investigative journalist made an extraordinary claim. He alleged that Pont Saint-Esprit was not an accident at all, but a secret experiment. That the CIA in the early years of the Cold War had deliberately dosed the town with LSD as a field test of mind control. He pointed to documents and to a transcript in which a representative of the Swiss laboratory that first synthesized LSD allegedly said that the Pont Saint-Esprit secret was that it was never the bread and never the ergot. Historians have pushed back hard on that claim. They point out that LSD acts within hours, while the townspeople took more than a day to fall ill, and that the drug doesn't cause the violent stomach sickness that swept through the town. The official answer remains the fungus. And yet, more than 70 years on, the people of Pont Saint-Esprit have never truly had their answer. A whole town plunged into a waking nightmare of fire and snakes and monsters, men who believed they were aeroplanes, children who turned on their parents, the dead and the dozens who were carried away to asylums. We can argue about whether it was a fungus, a chemical, or something far more sinister. But for the people who lived through it, the only certainty was the bread they ate that morning, and the horror that came after.
If you want to see some more scary videos, there's some links on the screen right now. Check them out, and I'll see you in the next one.